have some notes here just because I don't want to miss something that is probably important to say. My name is Laudon. I'm a wolf specialist for California Fish and Wildlife in the northern part of the state. I'm new to the state. I'm new to the agency. May 1st was my 1-year anniversary here. And just to give you an idea quickly about my background, I became a wolf biologist because I grew up in Wisconsin. That's why I talk funny. In hunting, fishing, camping kind of thing with conservation-minded parents. So I followed this career path in wildlife management and at UW-Stevens Point. I've done all kinds of things, worked with all kinds of critters since then. Black bears, mountain lions, mule deer, elk, wolves. My career trail is Oregon to Montana to Idaho, back to Montana, Arizona, New Mexico. Now finally here. I've been doing wolf work for 21 years, starting in 1997 in Idaho. 7 years in Idaho, 11 years in northwest Montana with the state of Montana there, and then 2 years, almost 2 years with the Mexican wolf program in Arizona and New Mexico. And of course, by working with wolves, what it really becomes all about is working with people, of course, and so especially in California, where wolves necessarily are going to have to make it on a very working landscape with agriculture. So that was my interest in coming here, is to see how can we, everything that we've learned from the past, the good stuff, the bad stuff, do we have a chance with a clean slate to try to work together with folks on the ground, local communities, to get this thing done the best that we can. So here really quickly, dispersing the wolves, to me the question is kind of not really, is it good that California has wolves or is it a bad thing? 11 different individuals, known individuals, have come to California now from other states. They're long-range dispersers. They go hundreds and even thousands of miles when they disperse. That's leaving their natal pack to find a partner to breed with and create a new pack. And so with those 11 individuals that have come here since 2012, beginning with the now famous OR7, 4 of those individuals have reproduced with the Shasta pack and now the Lassen pack, which I'll talk about today. That tells me that California is going to have some kind of a wolf population, so the question now is what to do about that. OR44 is one of the more recent dispersers to the state here. That's the bigger valley on the right there. That's Shasta Valley in Wairika towards the top of that. OR44, I think, came into the state somewhere around March, middle of March, something like that, if I remember correctly. The valley off to the left there is Scott Valley. He dispersed from his natal pack in northeastern Oregon on October 3rd. By the time we lost track of him, where you see the line kind of ends off on the right there, he has over 1,600 miles logged under his pads, if you will. And what I mean minimum is we just connect the dots. He locates every 12 hours by a satellite. And we don't know how he really goes. We just connect the dots, and that's what he has, a minimum of 1,600 miles. There's a picture of him from Rancher's Trail Cam in Scott Valley. So the optics there, the technology doesn't always work the best. He doesn't always locate, and we don't always get those downloads. But the optics here, of course, there's a radio-collared wolf in a rancher's backyard, and so he wasn't very happy. Why does he have a wolf there and nobody told him? So we're off to the races of how we can do a better job communicating with folks on the ground, which is by nature a super difficult thing to do. In the case of OR54, she was doing 18 miles a day, and it's really hard to get ahead of that and communicate to all the folks that might find that information beneficial. So these dispersing wolves are pretty difficult. But That was a good opportunity to meet a lot of good people in this Shasta Valley and Scott Valley, also community leaders and also agriculture leaders in the community, just like we're trying to do here in Plumas. There's another picture of him on that same trail cam hanging out with a bear for fun. Another one of our community partners here, this is actually where the Shasta Pack used to live on a ranch. We think that they don't exist anymore. But that ranch works with us a lot, and one of their range riders has trail cameras set up to monitor wolves, and he got this picture of OR-44. That's the last known location of him. His batteries are going weak on his collar, and his collar is no longer talking to the satellites. OR-54 is currently in Plumas County, in Sierra Valley area. This is her second trip to California. She is offspring of OR-7. She's from the rogue pack in southwest Oregon. OR-7 with a female wolf formed a rogue pack. This is their fifth litter. Some of the wolves from that pack, when they disperse, come to California. You can see there she kind of went through Shasta Valley, down all the way, almost going to Red Bluff there you can see, and then entering by Lake Almanor, entering over into Plumas County there, going as far south as hitting the interstate there, I-80, and then she has come back north. This is a little bit out of date, but she's since then been settling in the Sierra Valley area where I should stop here. So one of the things that we're trying to do is figure out how to talk to a whole bunch of people at once, and it becomes difficult. I can't do that. So one of the things that we've come up with, as we've learned with OR-44, is as a wolf comes into a county to go ahead and give the chair of the Board of Supervisors a call to give him a heads up. Another good person to contact would be, in this case, the Ag Commissioner. Tim's here today. Give him a heads up, and then work with the county extension agent too, who has very close relationships with ranchers. When the wolf does start to settle on a property, like it's on a bone pile or a carcass, or heaven forbid, actually kills something, we can see that it's hanging out in a specific area, and then we'll drill down to finding out who that producer is. And people like Tim and Tracy Shore is the county extension agent. They're very useful to have, and we work together to try to figure out who the person is so we can talk to them and do a ground visit with CDFW staff. Here's a website. On the website, it has all kinds of information. There's a wolf activity map on there. I think I have a picture of that. You can subscribe on the upper right-hand corner there, and then you'll get updates to the website when new news comes out. You'll see on the bottom part there on the left-hand side, those are the depredation investigations. There has been, I can't remember, I think maybe 3 in Plumas County so far. And one of those is confirmed damage where a wolf did injure a calf that was later euthanized. So all that information's up there. There's also tools, what producers can do to help deter conflicts with wolves. That's right under, towards the bottom there too. So wealth of information, a lot of fact sheets to help people learn about wolves. The obvious part there, wolves being new to California, this is new for everybody here. And that's what that looks like. The tools for California livestock producers, discourage wolf presence, etc. I didn't know I had this slide in here. But this is good to talk to just from the Northern Rockies. This stuff is online from the annual reports. These are confirmed wolf depredations in the 3-state area, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. But one of the rumors out there is you'll hear things like it takes an act of Congress to confirm a wolf kill, and that's certainly not true. You can see there especially when you go to the totals through the years. There's a lot of, those are confirmed kills there. They don't include probables. They do not include injured. So we do try our hardest to get that stuff down. There are problems with the inherence in it because sometimes livestock's just missing. There's nothing to investigate when that happens. The other thing too is you hope to get on them pretty fresh, because one of the things that wolves do, of course, is they start to eat all the evidence. So we try to get out and respond same day if we can, but certainly by the next day. Wolf reports, online reporting form there, we'll get those. That's super important. As you can imagine, or as you know, Northern California is this incredibly huge place, and I can't be everywhere, so when people report wolves to me, we keep track of all that. We look for patterns on the ground. When we have patterns, that kind of speaks for itself, and we'll go out there and start pounding the ground to do wolf survey to find presence. Once we have presence, then you can do things like trap and radio collar and start to monitor the population. All of that stuff's good to know the best that we can for to help communicate with livestock producers as well. There is the Lassen Pack right there. You'll see Lassen Pack. That's a buffered location. This is what's on the map. This we offer to the public to give a general idea. That yellow blob is a little bit bigger than their actual existence on the landscape. We use that too for land management agencies and private timber companies. Wolves are state and federally listed, so if they do have activities on the ground and they are in that yellow area, they should give us a call and we'll work with them to try to be as efficient as possible and try not to get wolves in the way of progress, if you will. Here's a little bit more detailed map of the pack there. That's actually her track log there from the satellites. If you connect the dots, she locates every 3 hours. We get a download about twice a day. That's when everything's working perfectly. Like I said, it doesn't always work perfectly. The northernmost and the southernmost points, just to give you an idea, that's about 55 miles, linear distance. And probably the most significant thing for them is on winter range portion. Winter range for them is Indian Valley in Plumas County. So a lot of presence in Indian Valley for those folks there. As you know, that there's all kinds of livestock interest there. When they did dive down into the valley, if you will, I looked at all the private property configuration and livestock interest there, and it was a lot of people to talk to at once, so we thought it was a good idea to do a community meeting, and we held a town hall meeting in Taylorsville there, something like January 11th. And Kevin was at that one, too. Some deterrents here. Because of California's listed status, unfortunately, there's no means for control if we have problem wolves. That's pretty standard stuff in lots of other places, the Northern Rockies and even on the Mexican wolf program. So we don't have a means for control. We don't yet have a compensation program. There are people that are interested in that and working towards that, developing a committee of folks to investigate the issue. What they want to do is have good representation by counties in that committee and by livestock interests, including Wool Growers, Farm Bureau, and Cattlemen's Association. Here's some of the non-lethal tools that we use. Those are called box lights. It's just it's developed by, I think, Australian rancher, sheep rancher, that it's supposed to mimic, I guess, distant flashlights waving around in a pasture and scare things like wolves or coyotes or whatever. I'll see if this is this. So you'll get kind of an idea here. This was on a sheep pasture in the North Arm where we deploy these. that particular producer essentially had to pack the 2 of the breeding adults and their 3 pups, grown pups, they're yearlings now, hanging around in that area essentially for the entire winter, and we didn't have any problems there at all, so far as we know anyway. Here's a fladry that we installed on one of the properties there. There's something about the red flags that scare wolves. It comes from Eastern Europe, where they used that fladry to scare wolves. They set up a funnel where people would push the wolves through, drive the wolves through the funnel. You'd have your shooters at the end of the funnel there. Eventually, it was put on turbo lines, so that's a hot wire, so if wolves do become habituated to it, and they decide to test it, they'll get zapped by the hot wire and hopefully reinforce that they don't like it. This was actually put on a cattle ranch, private property in Indian Valley, and they did not report any problems there, and at the time the wolves were quite close. Here's another ranch that we put fladry out. The wolves actually, at times, before we had the fladry out, were actually hanging out with the producer's cattle kind of a lot, sometimes all night long in the 35-acre pasture, if you can wrap your head around that. Doesn't make any of us feel comfortable. Nothing happened. But we got this fladry out. He was willing to try it. After that, it had the appearance that it had a full exclusion of the wolves. The wolves did not hang out in his cattle at all after that. I can't report cause and effect. Maybe the wolves had other things on the agenda for that period of time afterwards. He did at some point, he needed to start growing hay in that pasture and move the cattle out of the fladry. We were unaware that that had happened, and that's when the wolves were in there and they did injure a calf, unfortunately. There's another shot of it there too. Also doing some ranch visits too, and just doing some consulting and some things that producers might be able to think about doing that might deter conflicts. So if you're, in this case, I think, the wolves are hanging out on this ranch, and that's why, after we got up there, you could see that there's some old carcasses that were dug up. Really actually think that bears probably had dug them up some period of time before that, and then, of course, that makes it really easy for wolves to find. And so if people were interested in not having wolves hang around, especially for calving, it might be good to clean up some of that stuff, and that this producer was interested in reburying that stuff. Also, things like, maybe feeding in the evening in the wintertime, and that keeps cattle bunched up more during the nighttime period, which is a higher risk period than during the day, and potentially fladry, or maybe calving closer to the house if you have that kind of opportunity, so that you can have higher vigilance on what's going on with your stock. And so really it's about all of us kind of working together and figuring that out. I can talk about the wolf side, they talk about the cattle or sheep side, and hopefully we come with a plan.
I noticed on one of your slides it looked like the path of one of the wolves went right through Sierra Valley from the north to the south, and it looks like it may have crossed into Sierra County. Are you in discussions with Sierra County as well as Plumas as far as the Sierra Valley?
Yeah, so we have, that's come out of that whole OR 44 thing, and just working with people on the ground. We're kind of, evolving too. But what we came up with, it's doing that when a wolf crosses into a county, call the chair of the Board of Supervisors, call the Ag Commissioner. I think it's the same one, right? So that was an easy call. So he already knew that they were in Plumas. And then same in this case, the county extension agent is the same person too, right? Yeah.
I'm kind of leaving to the fact that a town hall meeting out in Sierra Valley might be warranted.
You know what? I just woke up thinking that this morning. Normally you wouldn't for these dispersing wolves, because they're kind of like, they're there for a couple weeks and then they're gone. but she's kind of hanging out for a while here, and so maybe we're starting to get into it's a prudent measure to do so. It's just, it's probably one of those things where as soon as we plan it, she'll leave on her own anyway. But it's definitely something that I appreciate the comment there. I think it's something to think about. Somebody in CDFW had an interesting thought that, or 7 in the summertime, he was traveling a lot. In the summertime, he hit the brakes. And he started to hang out in an area like he had a territory. And so the theory is, or the question is, that hormonal drive to mate, maybe you're so far out of the breeding season that you just start to settle for a while in the summertime and then take off again in the wintertime. In that case, the forecast would be she's going to live in Sierra Valley for the summer. I don't know that. We don't, these satellite collars that give us all this data are fairly new. So what I'm hoping to do is talk to all of my colleagues in the other states and see if that's a true thing. Do dispersing wolves tend to set up shop for the summertime?
Yeah, if you can put it on your radar, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, is that your area?
Yes, yes.
Okay, you bet. And then I'll probably talk to you about that too. Okay. That is probably the day before I captured her. We captured her June 30th. That's a breeding female of the Lassen path with 2 pups in tow. Forest Service camera, just by luck, was sitting in this spot that captured the previous image, and this pup's wrestling around right in front of the trail camera. Couldn't have planned that better. I think this is a shot from New Year's Eve. That's my truck in the background. I think that's up about the Lassen Plumas divide up there with tracks of 5 wolves in the snow heading to Indian Valley is what it looks like there. You might not be able to see it, but far on the left there is the male's track, and he has a bum leg. His right front foot leg he doesn't really use. He kind of holds it up, and if the lighting was better, you could see that there's actually the tip of his claws are sweeping, dragging in the snow there, and that's how you can kind of tell his track. Some trail cam videos really quick if they work. That's the female zipping by, and there's the male July 26th when his leg did work. We think it happened sometime later in the summer last year. And then finally got the pups on July 16th of last year. We don't have it yet this year. I do have cameras out there to try to monitor it. We have a credible report of last week. Sounds like somebody saw the pups, a member of the public, and they were kind enough to call us. And they said they saw 5. And just kind of a fun video here. I like to use this one. This is a pup here to demonstrate why wolves are so difficult to study. And then that was the end of the usefulness of that camera. So I've probably left a million things out, but that's what I have for now. If you have any questions.
I do. So how do you capture them? How that?
How do they say that the
the
state of the industry or is lake hole traps. There's the ones that we use are pretty common to use for wolf capture for research and management is the rubber laminated jaws.
Okay.
They're big lugs, so it looks like they're kind of big jack-o'-lantern teeth, these rubber lugs on there that grab the foot. Other ways that are conventional start to get more expensive and more dangerous, and they include aerial net gunning and aerial darting by helicopter. And it gets a little bit tougher enforcement.
So you capture them and then you put a collar on them?
Yeah.
While
After
they're,
we anesthetize them often.
and then there's pups maybe were there, like this last one of them, or whatever. I mean, you said there was, you captured one, there was pups.
We captured her, yeah, and what we try to do is we try to figure out where that pup area is, and we try to back off of the area with the traps so we don't have an accidental trap capture or pups, non-target animals. It gets kind of technical, but there's other things that you can do with pan tension to exclude smaller things like bobcats and coyotes and pups.
So how is the killing compared, you know, that chart you showed of the killing across states of cattle and sheep looked pretty high. I mean, it looked pretty. So how was that compared to the killing by coyotes and mountain lions?
Good question. So I'll say two things there. Those numbers are pretty big numbers, but that's our entire state. That's the state of Wyoming and Montana and Idaho. They're also, if you looked at the end of the count, since Northwest Montana started getting wolves in the early 80s, traveling, dispersing from Canada, and of course the reintroductions in Idaho and Yellowstone in 95, 96. So all those were depredations since then. Wolf damage compared to coyotes, for instance, is by tens of magnitudes much lower. So coyotes do a lot more damage to livestock than wolves do, typically. I don't have a sense of that with lions, but it could be similar to lion damage. Some things to think about there, and so far it's the case with the wolves and the Lassen pack. The Lassen pack is living with and moving through livestock every single day, all year round. So they have a lot of exposure to mainly cattle, a little bit of sheep in the wintertime. One of the things that happens with wolves is the amazing thing is that they do not depredate more often than what they do. So this is pretty classic that they can live with livestock and not do anything or have low levels of depredation, which is where we're at. You do always worry about it every time that they depredate, that they're going to start to go up to some kind of road that goes into more chronic behavior, and then those get to be pretty difficult to deal with. So if you will, in the bell curve, if you picture a bell curve, there's a lot of variation that occurs there. On the tail end of the bell curve, wolves can be a pretty big deal for individual producers. But that wouldn't be normal, but what we try to do is do everything that we can to prevent that from happening.
What about the deer population? You didn't mention anything about that.
Right, so what I could say, some thoughts about that regarding the wolves is, from my standpoint, no official survey, but on some range, deer densities seem low to me compared to other places I've worked. On winter range, they're a lot more concentrated, they're a lot higher. It seems like don't often see sign of deer on summer range. On winter range, you can go through the valley and count deer. That's the difference. Not much for elk in that country, I don't think. What I would say there is if that's true, that game densities are lower, the response of the pack would look something like perhaps a larger territory size. To give you an idea there, Montana, we had about mean territory size is about 220 square miles for a pack of wolves. The Lassen pack is somewhere around, I think, 450 square miles, to give you an idea. So that's kind of playing out that way. The other thing that you would expect to happen is the pack will tend to regulate themselves at lower pack numbers. So they would tend to probably always be a small pack is what I would expect. And by regulate themselves, how does that work with wolves? Of course, there's mortality, but then there's that dispersal thing. And so when times are hard and your rate of kill per what's actually at the dinner table, if you will, if there's not enough to keep everyone happy, there's probably more inter-pack strife, more competition for food, and maybe that doesn't work out too well, and that causes wolves to disperse.
So when you talked about burying carcasses, or that you showed that example, that seems like a burden on the livestock owner because they don't have many places, they can't, anywhere, if they buried it by their house, it'd be the same problem, the wolves would come there. It seems like, where do you bury it?
Well,
it's like, they don't have much options.
Right. So burying it or getting rid of it in some way is a good idea. Once you bury it, it's out of the way. You got to go deep to get it out of bears. I don't think you have to go that deep to get it out of wolves. I do understand that it is additional potential burden on livestock producers. My sense of talking to people in the Scott Valley, for instance, that they had either high water tables that they had to deal with, for which you can't bury carcasses, of course, and then or rock. So they didn't have a lot of opportunity there, but where they could, they certainly did. OR-44, he anchored in at least 2 bone piles, and those ranchers decided that it was that they were interested in getting rid of the attractant. They do not want the wolf hanging around. So it's up to them too. Then we just work together and see what they can do. If they need assistance, and I don't know, we'll talk about things that we can do there. It is interesting, in Siskiyou County, they are investigating, let me step back, there's a Blackfoot Challenge in Montana. It's a pretty cool organization that is state, county, federal agencies and landowners working together to address issues from noxious weeds to grizzly bears and wolves and everything in between. And one of the things that they've started doing is, well, they've got grizzly bears too, is a carcass removal program. And so they somehow have this funding for a truck, a driver. They have a phone tree that they use for grizzly bears, but they have good communication. They get carcasses out of there. The state of Montana also has composting of carcasses for roadkill mostly, but I think that they take those livestock carcasses as well. Siskiyou County is looking at the possibility of making that happen up there. I'll throw this in here too. Siskiyou County, it's kind of interesting. The former Ag Commissioner, he's retired now. He is also, they have him on the payroll for the county part-time as the wolf liaison for the county. And he's a huge resource too.
So one more question for me. Are there any wolf sightings in the state of Nevada? Since this one can be
We know this. Well, she came close, OR-54 came close to Nevada. I don't know what they have for other sightings there, but one of the Shasta pups was known to be in Nevada in 2016, I think, fall of 2016. Somebody videotaped a wolf. They were able to go out there, get scat, take a sample of the scat for genetics that matched up with one of the Shasta pups. And that's the last known of anything Shasta had at that point.
Has there been any threats or attacks on humans?
In North America, there have been 2 fatalities in North America. I can't remember the exact years. The interesting thing is that's throughout all of recorded history. Both of those occurred within our lifetimes. I want to say 15 years ago. One was in Alaska, a teacher jogging after work in a remote Alaskan town. The other one was a young guy at a remote, a mining camp in the Northwest Territories, I think it was. In that case, it's a remote camp, so you have your dumps, you know, and all kinds of bears and wolves are attracted to those kinds of things. Eventually they get habituated to people. That's generally not what you want, any kind of wildlife. I think that there was a report of some aggressive displays anyway of wolves towards people right before that happened. There is some debate about whether it was a bear or a wolf in that investigation.
I say that because we're high on recreation here, and the people are up in the woods and, you know, camping. And
yeah, I should just pull out, back out of that just to say, as far as human safety goes, human safety, like the other critters that we have, mountain lions aren't really a factor for wolves, just kind of not wired that way. Again, never say never, right? But I can tell you that I will go into a wolf den site where they have their pups, or to a wolf kill. I will do that. I'll go by myself. I'll go unarmed, no pepper spray, nothing, and I will feel completely comfortable doing that kind of activity. And just to show you that I'm not, you know, the Timothy Treadwell from the grizzly bear guy, I would not do any of those activities with a grizzly bear. Northwest Montana, we had moose, and a cow moose with a calf is potentially a far more dangerous thing than a wolf. So I do like to try to put people at ease with that whole part of it. The really big concerns are, I mean, God forbid if that happened, right? But the big concerns are livestock and dogs. So the old canine thing, super territorial. Wolves will kill dogs, they will kill coyotes, they will kill strange wolves, or 54 if she ran into a pack, that could be dangerous for her to do. I think that pretty much captures it. Right now, there's a really big one in the media. In Washington, I think a Forest Service worker, a young summer seasonal person, ran into some wolves. I think a wolf rendezvous site. She got barked at. She climbed the tree. She was scared. The Washington DNR actually sent a helicopter in to retrieve her. That happened, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago. Because it's a potential thing that people will be coming up with questions on. I have talked to, actually today, this morning already, with the wolf biologist there, just to get the inside scoop on what happened there, just to make sure it was a pretty just regular normal wolf stuff and not an actual aggressive encounter. What happens when you do go into these wolf pup place, den or rendezvous site? A rendezvous site is just where they take the pups after the den. They move them to another place, and there will be a series of rendezvous sites throughout the pup rearing season, which ends about September sometime. If you walk into one of those places, one of the things that can happen, they may just leave quietly. The other thing that could happen is they may approach you and they may bark or bark howl. It is a deep, chesty bark, and it is no doubt, if you did not weren't used to being around wolves, it would be quite an intimidating thing. And I think that's the whole point of it, is they're trying to get rid of the boogeyman. They're trying to haze. If you watch their body language, you can see that they themselves are not comfortable confronting you. When we trapped the female, even in a leg hold trap, I mean, I wouldn't go in there and just grab them with my bare hands or anything, but because defensively they'll snap at you, of course. But they are pathetic. They're all about just trying to get rid of get away from the boogeyman. They're flopping over themselves, you know, and just a lot of anxiety trying to get away from the whole thing. So that's really what wolves are. So
we had a lot of discussion about the negatives of predators. Can you tell us on the positive side that they have audio systems?
That one gets a little bit more difficult. There is, for instance, a popular thing going around on the internet. It's called Wolves Change Rivers or something like that. It's really kind of overplayed quite a bit. It's not necessarily accurate, but there was some early research done in Yellowstone National Park by a researcher there that found that because the presence of wolves, elk do not hammer on the aspen and the willows anywhere near as much, so they flourish more, and then you have the beaver thing that happens, and then you have more birds, and just ecosystems are healthier. It's a lot more complex than that, and the researchers after that have investigated the same thing, and they've not found that to be true. So I am not going to suggest that wolves don't have an important role in the ecosystem, but ecosystems are very complex, and it's really hard. I mean, it would be interesting, it would be great to have that piece, like, to say to rangers like Joyce, you know, here's why wolves are important for all of us. But it doesn't, I think it really just comes down to values. There's, of course, people love wolves. They are a beautiful animal, of course. To hear a wolf howl is a pretty cool thing. But there is the other part of it, that they do cause problems occasionally. And so it's hard. It's just a hard thing. It's just to muddle your way through all that.
I'm just thinking about in Australia, they stop rabbits.
Right.
Predators, and they do the culture and
Right.
control.
Yeah. I should, because
Talk about that balance of nature.
I should bring this up too on my phone. I don't know if Joyce wants to talk at all for public comment, but I did, there is another rancher down there in Indian Valley that wanted, she wanted to be here, but she couldn't. And she did say that she wanted to convey for her that they want a better ability to manage wolves when wolves get in trouble, to protect without prosecution, and for protecting their private property and their livestock. So it is definitely a big concern down there in Indian Valley with folks.
And just real quick, with the Lassen pack, and you know, I've got a lot of ranchers that are concerned with the winter coming up, and what kind of proliferation or expanding of the Lassen pack? Can you kind of talk about that, maybe?
Yes.
Where would it get to, and what kind of population do you see?
Yeah, so they had 4 pups last year. At least 3 survived into the winter time. They're yearlings now. I do not have good data to know who's with them still, if all 3 yearlings are there. They do possess the ability to make the pack more complex, maybe, in how they interact with livestock. So it is true that I would be a little bit more concerned about this coming winter than last winter, just because of that. However, because of maybe the potential food availability for them with deer, this fall, for instance, fall is one of the big dispersal pulses. I'm kind of anxious to see how many of those might take off this fall. So, and then you'd be back down to the pair and pups, and maybe something similar to next year. I can't really predict anything. These are just different things to think about as we go into next year. And I try to, when I'm talking to folks in the valley there, I try to paint all of the different parts, the picture of all the different parts of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So other states, if there's greater populations like Wyoming, do they have any control methods?
Well, currently they're delisted, so they have hunting season and tracking season for wolves. And but the control part in response to livestock damage, they've always had that. And in the state of Montana, for instance, they are state and federally listed. There was control in response to livestock damage. I think in the early days they moved wolves to a point where it didn't really make sense to move them anymore, and then it was all lethal control. highly controversial, of course, because, you know, in our society, I think killing, hunting, things like that, it's a pretty sensitive issue for a lot of people. And then you apply that to a critter like the wolf, so those kinds of things, if we were ever to start to talk about those kinds of things in California, you can imagine what that would look like. So.
Well, if the population grows, it will become a conversation. Or, well, you don't ever see it.
California hasn't, I mean, that's our issue. We can't even protect our private property. We have to watch them kill our cattle.
Right.
And if they increase, we're outnumbered. We're outnumbered. We can't do anything. I'd like to see it come back to the county level. Let the county tell us what we can do. The government did this to us. We didn't ask for it. We did it to us.
Right. No, I understand. That's what I was, as the population grows and more threats to livestock, there's going to be a lot more wanting them delisted.
No, we just want to protect our lives.
No, yeah, that's what I mean. Right.
They were handled more like a lion up there.
Right.
If they would leave us alone and they came into our livestock and we could take care of the problem, they would learn not to come into our livestock.
Right.
That's all we ask.
My brother had a problem with mountain lions back in Colorado. He has their adults, and he's went crazy trying to figure out what to do. He's found, like, having an Amazonian shepherd present, his problem's left. They will protect a herd with their life, and they are the size bigger than a wolf. But it also wasn't had inside the house, but it was a tremendous animal that was prevented from any attack. Even had bears, if the herd was proper.
Right, to that, wolves kill guard dogs. My dog is named after a dog I only knew in death doing its job, a Great Pyrenees. So I don't know that anyone's figured out, though, a good combination of breed or mix of breeds and number of animals that might so if you're going to do that, how would you do it to deter wolves? I think that they can deter wolves, but I think the other thing that can happen too, it can go bad on it too.
One of the other things, mountain lions are bad for attacks by wolves.
Right, and it's the canid territoriality thing too. Potentially too, you think about dogs also potentially being an attractant. I know Joyce was going to try to keep logs of what the behavior of her dogs and what she could deduce from that if the wolves were around. I think the wolf management plan is also on the website. It does talk about phases, population phases, where control could be a management tool. It's there. However, the commission, the Fish and Wildlife Commission, listed the species, and as I understand it, there is no means for control so long as they are state listed, even though the management plan provides for that. So and as I understand, this all happened before I was here, the commission did list the species against the advice of the Fish and Game Department, Fish and Wildlife Department.
In California?
Yes.
And welcome to California. Okay, Ken, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you.
Yes, I should somewhere.
Thank you.
Yep.
I do have a question, Ken. So you said there's 5 more puppies?
Okay.
Yeah, that's it's a credible report from the public. I believe he's
We're going to go to item 5B. Reappoint Craig Selmer as Plumas County Council effective August 1st, 2018. Approve second amendment to employment agreement signed between Plumas County and Craig Selmer as Plumas County Council and authorize the chair to sign. Discussion and possible action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was a tough one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, C, discussion and possible action regarding response to the fiscal year 17-18 final grand jury report.
All right, so, each year the grand jury will issue its final report. I didn't have a note here on the date that it was received, but once the report is actually received, issued and received from the grand jury, then that starts the time